Coach Tommy, is Frankie home? That disheveled 16-year-old on my porch that Saturday morning was Carlos, a friend of my son Frankie's of the same age and shortstop from one of the many baseball teams I've coached over the years. As anyone who has ever played a kid's sport knows, it doesn't matter if you become a space shuttle pilot, get a degree in thermonuclear quantum physics, or win the Nobel Peace Prize for curing cancer. For the rest of your life, you will always be addressed as Coach. Come on in, Carlos. Frankie's taking a shower right now. You can wait in the kitchen. I opened the door and made my way into the kitchen, and Carlos followed me. As we walked down the hallway, a large dog jumped out from around the corner. Candy 2, our 98-pound black Doberman Pinscher, heard Carlos's voice and came running. A protective but friendly rescue dog, Candy 2 always enjoyed coming to visit my son and nephew's friends. Candy 2 knew it meant two P's, to be petted or roughhoused. He liked both. I invited Carlos to sit in the chair and set a soda in front of him while I went back to cleaning up the dry dishes. Carlos, have you heard anything about your father? I must say we're very impressed that he's taken over as a researcher on NR1. Nervin, Carlos said. What? I replied, looking over my shoulder at the young man. The NR1 nuclear research submarine is called the Nervin. Dad said she never had an official name, but everyone calls her Nervin. That's good to hear, Carlos. But I'm willing to bet your dad will be one of the few marine biologists to spend 8 weeks on a nuclear submarine, crawling around on the ocean floor. I stopped talking and looked intently at Carlos. Our Doberman, Candy 2, was not engaged in a vigorous tug-of-war with Carlos, nor was Carlos stroking Candy 2 as one might expect. Instead, Candy 2 laid his big head in Carlos's lap, and his big brown eyes gazed mournfully at Carlos. There were silent tears in Carlos's eyes, and he raised his right hand. I knelt down to examine the limb and saw that it was swollen. As a volunteer athletic trainer, I had taken several courses in medicine over the years and had seen injuries. What's wrong, son? I asked softly, removing his hand so I could examine the arm. Uh, Coach Tommy, I fell off my bike. I knew that Carlos, in addition to being a shortstop like a vacuum cleaner, was also active with his father in motorcycle racing. With his balance like a mountain goat and reflexes like a cat in his youth, the likelihood of Carlos falling off his bike and suffering a similar injury was as likely as me at 5 feet 6 inches tall, playing starting center on the Los Angeles Lakers NBA basketball team. I decided not to bring it up. Carlos, we need to get you to the ER right away. I pulled out my cell phone. What's your mom's number? I'll have her meet us at the ER. No, I don't know. My mom's number is programmed into my phone, and my phone broke when I fell off my bike. Okay, Carlos, no problem. I'll have Frankie stop by your house and tell your mom to meet us at the ER. I'll be fine, Coach Tommy. Please don't call my mom because I don't even think she's home. I stood up and headed down the hall to the bathroom. Well, Carlos, we won't know that until Frankie comes to your house. As I opened the bathroom door, I saw through a cloud of steam my 16-year-old son Frankie doing what every teenager does in the shower. Papa, Frankie yelled, pulling his hand away from his wet groin. I shook my head. Frankie, look. Carlos hurt himself. Get out of the shower before you go blind and go to his house. Tell his mom to call me and meet us at Memorial ER. Next chapter. The good or bad side of coaching. My 2 sons and nephews on sports teams for so many years, as well as being in charge of school lunches, was that everyone seemed to know me. Everyone from the administrator to the radiologist had been on one of my teams at one time or another, or had a brother, sister, cousin, son, daughter, nephew, niece, neighbor, or colleague in the sports program I participated in. Although it was hard to keep track of names and years, my fame helped Carlos get through the usually rushing and waiting ER for treatment in record time. It bothered me that Carlos' mother still hadn't shown up or called. I was very upset that my son Frankie was not returning my calls or returning my phone calls. I foresaw that in the very near future his cell phone would be confiscated and canceled. The ER doctor sitting in front of me had once been a goalie on a team I coached and still looked like a young guy. I was trying to determine his age when he gestured for me to sit down and place some x-rays on the wall. Coach Tommy, as you can see, Carlos has a fracture. He's getting a cast on it now. Taking out a pen, he pointed to a spot on the x-rays. This fracture was not the result of a fall. This I can tell you for sure. In my experience, it looks like a spiral injury caused by twisting the limb. He put the pen back in his pocket. Coach, isn't Carlos's father Wallace, the marine biologist who sailed on the nuclear research submarine? Yeah, he's been gone for 6 weeks. Wallace, Carlos's father, should be home in about 2 more weeks. Doc took the x-rays and put them back in the folder. Normally, I would have reported it, but since Carlos's dad, Wallace, isn't around, it was probably just a teenage fight or he and his buddies were playing MMA. He looked at me. If you find another trainer, let me know. Next chapter. Back home, I put Carlos to bed in my oldest son's room. Both my oldest son and my nephew were in college. The painkillers given to Carlos at the hospital made it easy to put the sleepy boy down. And the fact that he had his Doberman Candy 2 with him finally convinced me of that. I was still worried that we couldn't reach Carlos's mother, and angry that my son Frankie still wasn't picking up the phone. It was in this state of mind that I picked up the phone when I saw Frankie's name on my cell phone display. Frankie, you better get some tin cans and a ball of string, because that's the closest you're going to get to a phone until you're 21. Where the hell are you? Dad, I'm kind of in front of Carlos's house. Great, I growled. Is Carlos's mom there? Did you knock on the door? Is her car in the driveway? Have you tried calling the neighbors? Jesus, son, it's been almost 6 hours. Indecision was heard on the other end. Ah, Dad, Carlos' mom has been home the whole time. I think her name is Anna. You've met her. She's kind of a MILF lady, but I haven't talked to her yet. What? I shouted. Go and beat this woman up now. You hear me? Have her call me immediately. Jesus, she must be really worried about her son. Dad, Frankie said, Carlos called me from the hospital, begged me not to tell his mom where he was. Carlos called you? I asked. He said his phone was broken. I heard Frankie shrug, even through the phone. I don't know, Dad. It's just that Carlos made me swear I wouldn't tell his mom where he was. I tried to stay calm. Frankie, if you want to hear swearing, wait until you get home. Now go to that house and tell that woman where her son is before I pull out my phone and spank you again for yesterday. Next chapter. 15 minutes later, there was frantic pounding on my door. When I opened the door, I didn't have time to say a word before an excited, attractive woman about my height with light brown hair burst in. For a small woman, she was making a lot of noise. Oh my goodness, Tommy. I'm so glad you found Carlos. Is he all right? Where's my boy? Where is he? Turning away from the front door, I saw a car at the curb with its engine running. Someone must have given Anna a ride because the passenger side door was open. It seemed Anna didn't even bother to wait for the car to stop, let alone close the door. Anna, calm down, please. I started holding my hands out in front of her. We just got back from the hospital. Carlos is resting right now. I know. Your son Frankie told me. Anna interrupted me, needing my hands. But Frankie didn't have any more details. What did the doctor say about Carlos? Is he okay? I need to see him. I could see that Anna was on the verge of hysterics, and I was afraid her panic would upset Carlos. Anna, the doctor said Carlos needs rest. Actually, the doctor said to let Carlos calm down, but I decided a slight exaggeration of the truth wouldn't be unreasonable. Why don't we just let Carlos sleep and we can talk to him later? Let me tell you what the doctor said about Carlos's condition in the kitchen, and you tell me what's going on, okay? I heard someone walk through the door behind me. A deep voice commanded, Listen, asswipe, we need to talk to the kid now. Randy seemed to open his mouth for a sarcastic reply, but at the same instant a dark tornado filled the small space between us with a roar. Randy was tossed to the ground in the coat of a black and tan 98-pound Doberman with fangs and claws named Candy 2. Next chapter. Anna stood with her eyes widened with shock, afraid to even move as she watched the carnage. Out! Roared an imperious female voice. Candy 2 stopped his attack on Randy, sat up, but kept his eyes on him, grinning and displaying an impressive set of sharp fangs. The authoritative female voice belonged to my former sister-in-law, Lisa. The tall, attractive blonde with the scarred face was the housekeeper, cook, and mother to my brother and me, and our offspring. At the moment, however, Lisa didn't look like a housekeeper. Perhaps it was the double-barreled shotgun she was holding, aiming at Randy. Shit! Randy exclaimed, raising his head and aiming it at Lisa, and said to Anna, That bitch is just crazy. Lisa pulled the safeties off both triggers. That's right, Moose. Not only am I a crazy bitch, but I'm also a former con artist with a documented mental illness. Lisa headed toward me. Tommy, call the police and get in touch with your brother Vince. Let him know what's going on. When I pulled out my cell phone, Anna suddenly came to life. No, please, no police, please. Anna waved her hands. Tommy, Lisa, please. Just let Randy go. I'll explain everything. I shook my head. Anna, that flabby steroid moose. I pointed at Randy. Attacked me in my own house. Besides, this isn't the first time that huge asshole and I have had a fight. Anna grabbed my hand in which I was holding my cell phone. Tommy, please. Don't do this for me or him, she pointed at Randy. Do it for my son Carlos. Just let Randy go, please. I promise I can explain everything. Lisa kept the shotgun lowered as she spoke to me. Screw it, Tommy. Let that moose Randy go. We can have the police grab him later. I shrugged and nodded. Lisa pointed the shotgun at Randy toward the door. Randy cautiously rose to his feet with his hands up. Looking at me, he hissed, Later, old man. A little advice, Randy. Never get into a fight with an old man. If he's too old to fight, he'll just kill you and be done with it. Next chapter. I was sitting at the kitchen table with Lisa. My brother Vince had come home from work and he and I had talked things over. He was making coffee. We waited for Anna, who retired to the bathroom after checking on a sleeping Carlos. Lisa, where did that old gun come from? I asked, pointing to the shotgun in the corner. That relic is so old, you're lucky it didn't go off and kill someone. No way, Lisa replied with a smirk. There wasn't a single shell casing in it and the firing pins had been removed. You know how I feel about guns? I was still trying to comprehend what had happened. What about the good old I never bluff, Lisa? Lisa shrugged. People can change, especially if they want it very badly. She sighed and pointed at the sleeping weapon. I got it from Metropolis property after my ended, event. I keep it as a reminder of what people are willing to do to protect their family. Lisa looked at my brother and her ex-husband Vince's back, then lowered her gaze longingly to her fingernails. And about what people, especially me, have to do to protect their family. My brother Vince and his ex-wife Lisa had a complicated relationship. Lisa would marry Vince in a heartbeat, but after her infidelity, Vince looked at Lisa as nothing more than the mother of his children. I don't mean to say he treated her badly. Lisa was at our house every day, her old house, and Vince and I paid her to be a domestic goddess to us and the kids. Lisa and Vince still slept together sometimes, and I'm not sure if it was lust, convenience, nostalgia, or a combination of all three reasons. I never saw or heard of Lisa going on dates. If she wasn't home, Lisa went to classes at the local community college. Vince still went on dates with girls, but not as often as he could. Lisa never said anything, but it was obvious how resentful she was when Vince had a sleepover. Vince had just sat down at the table with 4 cups of coffee and we served milk and sugar when Carlos's mom, Anna, walked into the room. Lisa pointed her to a chair with a cup in front of her. Okay, Anna, sit down and start talking. What the hell is going on? Vince stirred her coffee. How in God's name is Randy involved? Taking a sip of my brew, I suggested, maybe the Nazis weren't hired and he was available. Vince and Lisa looked at me as Anna sat down and took a deep breath. Wallace, my husband, has been gone for almost 2 months. This is the first time we've been separated for so long. She paused to calm herself and took a sip from her cup. I know that after the county cut his position last year, my work at the supermarket wasn't enough. Wallace just wasn't getting the job done. He has a doctorate in marine biology, for God's sake. And yet he worked at a pet store with aquariums and cleaning pools. A look of disgust appeared in Anna's eyes. What kind of person went from the country's leading researcher to scavenging scum from the bottom of other people's pools? I felt like Lisa was about to leap across the table. A real man, you stupid asshole, she hissed. A father and husband who puts nothing above the well-being of his family. Lisa shook her head. You've been having fun with Randy, you stupid bitch, haven't you? It was a statement, not a question. Anna's mouth dropped open as Lisa continued. You were having fun with that worthless, useless, good-for-nothing Randy. Anna became defensive. At least Randy owns his own business. He should be doing well. Did you see that Mercedes CL he drove me here? Vince set his coffee cup aside before he spoke. Randy runs a modest third-tier debt collection agency with 4 phones in a rented back room of a warehouse on MLK Street. The Mercedes is collateral he hasn't turned in yet. Lisa and I stared at Vince, who lowered his eyes into his coffee cup in embarrassment. I, well, kind of kept an eye on that asshole, just to make sure he didn't bother you after, you know. Tears came to Lisa's eyes as she grabbed Vince's hand. Vince, that's so sweet. I've never... Okay, I intervened. You two can get a room later, pointing at Anna. I don't care about your buddies. What happened to Carlos? Anna bit her lip before answering. I was so lonely, and Randy kept coming into the store. Walked through my row, complimented me. He even bought me flowers once. That led to coffee, then drinks, then... This afternoon we were together when Carlos came home unexpectedly. Now the table exploded. You had fun with that asshole in your own house? In your own bed? No, Anna objected. What do you take me for? We used Carlos's room. I nearly fell off my chair. Anna tried to back away. I was going to change the bedding. Clean the room. I swear it was the first time, a moment of stupidity after too many glasses of wine at dinner. I'd never seen Vince and Lisa at a loss, but both were too stunned to speak. I felt like I was going to throw up. Randy said the cops are going to take my son Carlos and put him in social services. They're going to arrest me for being a bad mother endangering the welfare of a child. Randy said Carlos's ego is just hurt, and we can talk to him when Carlos cools down. So that's it, Vince muttered. Self-preservation. It's all about you. Again, you were only thinking about how all this would affect you. Randy said we could keep it quiet. Randy knew a guy who could get Carlos a used car, the dream of any aspiring race car driver. Maybe set Carlos up with some babes who owed Randy for some debts. So you were going to bribe Carlos to keep him quiet? I asked. More like Anna was getting paid for services rendered, Lisa commented. So Anna, that's the price you set? I was disgusted with this conversation and got up from the table. Anna, tell Randy that his wealth of medical experience needs updating. I grabbed a folder from the counter and tossed it on the desk. Your buddy broke your son's arm. It's in a cast. Fortunately, he's young and the arm will heal quickly, hopefully just in time for your next lovemaking session. Anna ran to the sink, pushing Lisa out of the way, and began to vomit. After vomiting, she rinsed her mouth, scooping water into her palm. Turning around, Anna supported herself before speaking. I need to take Carlos home. Anna, that might not be the best option right now. Why don't we just let the boy rest? Vince suggested. Anna straightened up. I'm Carlos's mother. I'll decide what's best for him. She seemed to deflate a little. Please. There was silence in the room, the tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. I'm not going home with you. All eyes turned to the voice. Carlos stood in the kitchen doorway, his hair sticking up and his fresh cast still gleaming white. Anna took a step toward Carlos, spreading her arms wide. Oh my God, baby. I'm so sorry. Let me look at... Carlos interrupted Anna with a voice cold as ice. Stay away from me. Anna froze. Oh, Carlos, you must come home immediately. I'll take care of you. Carlos lifted his cast. I have had enough of your concern, thank you very much. Anna tried again. Carlos, I just want you to come home so I can make sure you're okay. That's all I want. I saw Carlos roll his eyes. Well, Mom, I want the Lord Jesus Christ to knock the ball off the base in the final 7th game of the World Series. Looks like none of us are going to get what we want. Anna looked at the 3 adults in the room for support. I certainly wasn't going to support her. Anna turned to Carlos again and spoke in that authoritative tone that every parent knows. Look, young man, this is non-negotiable. You're not staying here. You are now coming home with me. Carlos rummaged in his pocket with his one good hand and pulled out a cell phone. Opening the phone, Carlos showed Anna the keypad. Is that it, Mom? Why don't we call the police and get their opinion? Anna's eyes widened as Carlos continued to speak. I heard what you said about social services and child endangerment. I may not stay here, but I am not going back to your house. I bet if the police come, you won't go back to your house either. Anna slumped down in her chair. Carlos, please? But Carlos continued as if she hadn't spoken. If the cops make me come home, I'll just run away and keep running. My brother Vince came to Anna's rescue. Look, Anna, Carlos, this is really hard to digest. Carlos, you can stay here tonight. It's summer, so you won't have any classes. And my son and nephew would love to stay the night with us. He turned to Carlos's mom, Anna. I'll make sure the boys don't spend all night playing Call of Duty 2 and go to bed at the proper time. Vince helped Anna up from her chair. Come on, Anna. I'll give you a ride home. Next chapter. Carlos stayed at our house for more than one night. A three-way fight broke out in our family. Vince was leaning towards just calling the authorities and getting it over with. I wanted to wait until Carlos's father Wallace came home before calling the authorities. Then Carlos would be in his father's care and not in the bureaucracy of social services. Lisa also wanted to wait until Wallace arrived from his trip. However, Lisa felt that they should let their family sort things out. Lisa, who had been to prison, did not want to leave her second mother to fend for herself. In my opinion, Anna deserved to stay at the Gray Bar Hotel. Carlos refused to see or even talk to Anna. She called several times a day, and for the first few days she showed up at the house, even bringing Carlos's favorite food. After a while, that stopped, and Carlos would run out the back door at the sight of his mother's car. Anna's eyes filled with tears as she stood in our kitchen and watched Carlos depart from the back porch. Tommy, can't you pick him up? She set a large foil dish on the kitchen table. It's his favorite dessert. I shook my head. Anna, your son is not a runaway cat who can be lured back into the yard with catnip. Carlos is an emotionally unstable teenager who, even in a cast, can run around like a damn deer. Even if I wanted to, which I don't. The only way to catch him and bring him back is to tranquilize him. Anna started calling several times a day, but Carlos refused to pick up. Lisa took most of the calls. One had to admire her patience, for they were always the same. Anna, Carlos won't come to the phone and I can't get him to, Lisa said, putting her ear to the receiver. It's more than mistakes have been made, Anna. You'll have to tell your husband Wallace as soon as he gets home. It's not like you went to bed at night a loving wife and woke up in the morning a stupid cheater. Lisa rolled her eyes. I don't care what Randy said. I can't believe you're still in contact with that steroid bastard. Cut off all contact immediately if you have half a brain. I don't think Randy's suggestion to rock Wallace's world in bed before you tell him is going to help. Think above the belt buckle, Anna. There was a pause as Lisa made a grimace. There's no way you can keep this from your husband. There are three options. You tell him, Carlos tells him, or I tell him. Another lingering pause. Anna, if by some miracle you manage to bribe Carlos to keep quiet, I will still tell Wallace. If there was any way to contact the submarine, I'd do it right now. Lisa switched the phone to the other ear and made a spinning sign with her finger. Anna, you can't hide from Wallace that you dented your car, or Carlos got a C in math. Yes, it could ruin your marriage, but the alternative is to live a lie. It's Wallace's choice, and only he can make that decision. You made your decision when you were having fun with Randy. Now your husband has to make his decision. Okay, Anna. I'll tell Carlos you called and you love him. I have to go now. Bye? Lisa put her phone back on the charger and sat down. Jesus, Tommy, that woman is just delusional. She wanted me to do this to her and Wallace like I was some whore for hire. I was amused by this new twist. What did you tell her, Lisa? Lisa threw me a look that could freeze ice. No is a complete sentence. I set a cup of coffee in front of Lisa. Anna thinks she can live happily ever after like you? Lisa put some sugar in the cup. Of course, because my fairy tale life is based on a true story. So, Lisa, matriarch of the family, what do you think will happen to Carlos's family? Lisa deepened into her coffee for a moment. A writer, Sugna, once wrote that a husband can be hurt by adultery and divorce, but children are often literally destroyed by it. Even without divorce, adultery can destroy them. What children get from cheating parents is a big dose of shame. Shame because half of them are the parents themselves. Half of them are the betrayer. They can believe that the cheating parent not only didn't love the other parent, but they didn't love themselves. I sat down across from Lisa. Do you think this applies to our descendants? Lisa looked sad. I hope it doesn't. I'm just lucky that you and Vince let me be a constant presence in the children's lives. I pray that I've been able to undo some of the damage I've done. I waved my hand. You've more than earned your time. I appreciate your concern for my boys after my ex-wife Brandy. You know, I hadn't seen or heard from my ex-wife Brandy since she left home, and I refused to give her money. My boys still kept in touch with her through Facebook, but Brandy was not a mother to them, more like an abstract relative. Lisa was a mother to them that they addressed. They called her Aunt Mom. Last I heard, Brandy was in Vegas working as a waitress, going through a series of relationships and collecting tattoos and piercings on her body. Lisa's face took on an angry expression. That bitch Brandy is a Rhea. She stopped and stared at her hands. I looked at her. She took a deep breath. I wanted to tell you that bitch Brandy is the reason I'm divorced and I never know where I'm supposed to sleep, here or in that rented apartment where I keep my clothes. Lisa sat up straighter. But it's not true. And if I repeat it a million times, my current life won't be what my past choices made it. It was me, not Brandy. And nothing but a time machine is going to change that. I didn't know what to say. Lisa, at least you tried to make the best out of a bad situation. Brandy gave up on her marriage and family. In my eyes, that already means something. Thanks, Tommy. But saying I'm a better judge of relationships than Brandy is like saying I'm the world's tallest midget. Well, looks like you'll have another young cub to mother, I said, pointing to the noise of video games coming from the bedroom where Frankie and our newly arrived Carlos were. Next chapter. Son of a bitch. Vince and I were in the subway building when he uttered that phrase. We were there to support Wallace, who, along with his son Carlos, had been staying with us for the past few months. We were just about to enter the hall used by the family court for Wallace's divorce proceedings. The Honorable Judge Reynolds, I said, running my finger over the sign and reading the inscription. I'm starting to get PTSD attacks. How is that old creep still alive and in a courtroom? Vince shook his head. Wallace will be screwed to the floorboards. I looked around for Wallace and his shark. That creep, Judge Reynolds, handled my divorce a long time ago, and he was a decrepit old man then. Vince nodded at the recollection, and I continued. Judge Reynolds ignores state rules and just makes shit up as he goes along. Child support and maintenance should be calculated from after-tax income and not exceed 25% even then. That old bastard sliced things up so that I barely had 25% of my after-tax money left over with all the paychecks, child support, and shit. Let's not forget, Tommy, what happened when you tried to challenge his decisions. I could barely keep from spitting at that memory. Damn, Reynolds threw my ass in a wedge. No lawyer, no appeal, no hearing, nothing. Family court is a civil case, so habeas corpus and due process don't mean shit. Other courts wouldn't even rule on this asshole. Vince looked around the crowd for Wallace, too. That old cupcake is stuck in the 1950s. I've never met a woman who wasn't a poor thing or a member of the weaker sex in need of protection because they can do no wrong. I agreed. If he starts talking about how he's not a divorce judge but a family healer, I think I'm going to throw up. Unfortunately, about an hour later, we were sitting on the bench in Judge Reynolds' courtroom, and I was trying to keep my breakfast from bursting out and splattering the couple sitting in front of me. I was afraid it was going to be a losing battle as we listened to the speech of this freak in a robe who looked as old as Yoda from Star Wars. Now, in my judgment, I don't see myself as a mere judge deciding who gets the silverware and the gravy boat. I see my God-given mission as preserving families. Judge Reynolds looked at Wallace. Young man, I have been on this case for a long time, and you have never provided me with sufficient grounds to dissolve this marriage. In my experience, marriage is like a garden, and you must tend to your wife regardless of her circumstances and wanderings. I leaned over to Vince and whispered, I thought marriage was more like a deck of cards. At the beginning, you only need 2 hearts and a tambourine. And by the end, you wish you had clubs and spades. Vince coughed to suppress a laugh as the judge continued his sermon. I see that your latest income is not up to your potential. If you continue with the divorce proceedings, you will have to find a way to meet the financial obligations I am about to impose. Otherwise, you will enjoy the hospitality of my prison until you can find the means. We saw Judge Reynolds take off his glasses. But young man, today is your lucky day and I'm feeling generous. I am assigning you 6 months of marriage counseling, at least 3 times a week, with a counselor of your wife's choice. As head of the family and traditional breadwinner, you will be responsible for the cost. This should set you both on the right path. Wallace's attorney stood up. Your Honor, my client appreciates your concern and taking the time to use your wisdom and years of experience in restoring marital unions. However, he believes that the court will waste time in restoring their relationship. We ask you to rule on those issues on which both parties have been unable to agree. Judge Wallace pointed at Anna. Is that what you want too? Anna's attorney jumped to his feet. No, Your Honor. My client wants her husband back and believes that with time and labor, they can rekindle the romantic relationship and lost trust that was inadvertently created by an unfortunate misunderstanding. The judge put his glasses back on. That will be all. I order 6 months of marriage counseling at least 3 times a week with a counselor of the wife's choice. The husband will be responsible for the cost and the court will be kept informed weekly of the progress of the counseling. Any questions? Wallace addressed the attorney in a whisper. The attorney shrugged and turned to the judge. Your Honor, my client accordingly refuses to attend or pay for any marriage counseling. Judge Reynolds looked surprised. Indeed, young man, you are not the first to challenge my authority, nor are you the first to rethink your life choices in my jail. He pointed to the elderly city police officer in the corner and then to Wallace. I find you in contempt of my court and order you to be incarcerated for 48 hours. Officer, please take this man to his cell. The judge raised his gavel. Let's see how your attitude changes in 48 hours. If you don't come around, we'll try another 72 hours as an inconvenient guest of the county. I let out a curse and felt a queasy feeling in my stomach. It was like a flashback. I was in Wallace's shoes, even sitting in the same chair. Vince leaned over to me. Deja vu, he said in a low voice. I've seen all this shit before. But before Judge Reynolds could bang his gavel, a tall, well-groomed man who looked like he'd stepped out of Hollywood Central Casting came up from the middle of the sparse audience. Your Honor, allow me to address the court. Judge Reynolds gave the man a glance. I do not welcome disorderly conduct in my courtroom. You'd better behave yourself or you're going to go to the holding cell with this young man. Thank you, Your Honor. I am the federal district attorney in charge of this county, and I have information pertinent to this case. Reynolds didn't look happy. All right, approach the bench, but take your time. I have a schedule to keep. The Fed took a quick step toward the courtroom exit and handed the bailiff a thick pile of papers. As you can see, Your Honor, I have a federal district court order requiring that this man, he pointed to Wallace, is to be made available as needed to participate in a government project of great importance. Reynolds glanced quickly through the papers and tossed them aside. This is my courtroom, young man. My word is law here. I don't see why my brothers in the federal judiciary should care. The Fed paused briefly. I understand, Your Honor. But as you can see, this ruling does not allow for incarceration except in cases of criminal behavior. In that case, the federal government reserves the right to determine the correctional facility. He looked at Wallace, then back at the judge. In this state, divorce is categorized as a family matter under the jurisdiction of the civil court. The court's order clearly states the part that does not allow for imprisonment for any civil offense. Judge Reynolds blushed. Easy there, counselor. I have no objection to you being in contempt of court. The Fed paused again before speaking. I'm sorry about that, Your Honor. I meant no disrespect to you or the court. However, if you take actions that violate the warrant you have, I will regrettably be forced to charge you with a federal offense and take you into custody. Reynolds tapped his gavel. That's it. You have exhausted my patience. He turned to the courtroom clerk on duty. Put them both under arrest. I'll be back later to sign the papers. The Fed sighed and turned to several stout men in the audience who were wearing windbreakers with the yellow U.S. Marshal lettering on the back. I'm very sorry to have to do this, Your Honor. Marshals, please remove the judge and detain him. I watched as the stenographer scurried out of the room and the big men silently emerged from the rows of seated men and strode purposefully toward the elevated court podium and Judge Reynolds sitting on it. Reynolds's face flushed so much that I thought he was about to faint as he shouted to the court officer. Arrest them! Arrest them all! Your Honor, the Metropolitan Court official stammered. The Fed looked kindly at the elderly court officer. Officer, please don't move, or you too will be charged and taken into custody. When the marshals approached Reynolds, he was standing in his chair, his bare feet in sandals visible under his black robe and drool dripping from his face as he shouted, This is my court. All of you are breaking the law. All of you. All of you will not escape detention. While the rest of the courtroom sat stunned, I wanted to jump up and scream. Suddenly, both of the old oak doors at the back of the courtroom swung open, and it seemed like every judge in the county poured into the room like a tide in a black robe. Next chapter. That morning, we were thrown out by the bums. The next day, we found ourselves in the same seats, in the same hall. The only difference was that Lisa had joined us, and standing on the platform in a black robe was a young blonde girl who looked like she could have been my son's classmate. I had a slight hangover as an impromptu celebration had begun at the bar across from the courthouse yesterday. Most of the attorneys were buying drinks, and the court clerks, police officers, and lawyers were trying to outdo each other by telling the most outrageous stories about Judge Reynolds. My head was still spinning when Vince leaned over to us and said, in a low voice so Lisa and I could hear him, "One of the court clerks in the cafeteria said they had to pull that judge out of traffic court to handle family court. Apparently, family court is proctology for the judge. No wonder no judge has ever tried to throw Judge Reynolds off his throne yet." "Traffic court?" Lisa asked, looking at the young judge. "She doesn't look old enough to have a driver's license." The blonde female judge tapped her gavel, calling the room to order, and addressed the audience. "Judge Reynolds retired yesterday after a long and distinguished career on the court." Laughter swept through the hall. The young judge grinned, realizing the obvious. "I'll take up the case where he left it." We sat, dejected, while Anna and Wallace's attorneys talked to the judge on the dais, out of earshot. As they retreated to their benches, I thought, let the games begin. The referee looked at both sides before he spoke. As always, it comes down to money. She shuffled some papers in front of her. "I see that you both have roughly equal amounts in your retirement accounts after your husband withdrew money last year," Wallace's attorney offered. "That was to prevent foreclosure on my client's home after his retirement last year, Your Honor." The judge nodded without raising his eyes. "Since both have roughly equal salaries and not much left in their bank accounts, there will be no alimony from either party." She looked at Anna. "I understand you are claiming that your husband is hiding funds?" Anna's attorney stood up. "Yes, Your Honor. Several months ago, the husband made a favorable contact with the U.S. government. The money was to become part of the marital estate." "That's not true, Your Honor," Wallace's attorney objected. "My client was subcontracted to a foreign company that required him to open a bank account in this country in order to transfer funds into it upon completion of the contract." The young judge made a hand motion for the lawyer to speed up. Wallace's attorney handed some papers to the bailiff to give to the judge. "As you can see, under current law, income earned outside the country is not taxable or reportable until it is brought to these shores." The judge furrowed her eyebrows. "I thought that only applied to corporations." "Yes, Your Honor, it does. As you can see, my client has a corporation in the same country as required for his contacts." Anna's attorney jumped to his feet. "Your Honor, this is an obvious attempt by my husband to withhold funds owed to my client, not to mention the taxman." Wallace's attorney shook his head. "Not at all, Your Honor. My client intends to pay his share of the taxes. And as for taking money out of the country, my client is simply following the business practices of American companies like Microsoft, Apple, Google, Boeing, and General Electric, each of which had over $10 billion overseas last year that they did not bring into this country and pay taxes on." "No wonder everybody hates the IRS," the white-haired judge muttered. Wallace's lawyer replied, "Actually, tax laws are passed by Congress. However, my client's soon-to-be separated spouse can file for a refund in the same country where her accounts are located." The judge looked at him skeptically, shifting the papers in front of her. Wallace's attorney must have thought the same thing, for he added, "It's not uncommon, Your Honor. The most high-profile case of recent times was that of GE executive Jack Welch. It was decided that the funds Mr. Welch owned at GE, which have yet to be brought to the United States for taxation, were not part of the spouse's assets that could be distributed by the American court system." Anna stood up. "That money was supposed to go to pay the bank for our house." She exclaimed, "That's not fair." The judge merely shrugged. "Please ask your client to sit down." She then turned to Anna. "If you think the tax laws are unfair, you can always write your congressman." The judge glanced at her notes. "That brings us to the next problem, the house. I see a notice from the bank that they are starting foreclosure proceedings. While this is unfortunate, it makes things easier. If and when the bank seizes your property, each party will equally share the financial and tax consequences of that action. Breaking away from her occupation, the young judge rubbed the bridge of her nose before she spoke. Now, the final issue is child custody. I see that the son is living with his father outside the home. Yes, Your Honor, Wallace's attorney said, standing up. He's sharing a room with two of his classmates in a stable family that includes two other fathers he's separated from, one of whom is his high school coach. Sounds like a real boys' club, the judge commented. The lawyer pointed to Lisa. Your Honor, the mother of one of the boys provides domestic services and meal preparation to ensure a female approach. The judge looked at Lisa and nodded. It's nice to see a mature lady in this man cave to provide a stable female influence. Lisa forced herself to smile, but also hissed under her breath. Who the hell does she think she is to call me old? The judge looked at Anna and held out some papers to her. Your spouse has pointed to adultery as the catalyst for the breakup of your relationship and has provided documents that you do not dispute. While this is not the deciding factor, I would be lying if I did not take it into account in making a child custody determination. The judge now turned to Wallace. The state's guidelines favor the mother getting physical custody and becoming the custodial parent, and the father getting broad visitation rights. I saw Wallace slump in his chair as she continued. Also, the fact that you may be leaving again for a job you won't be able to contact for an indefinite period of time makes me lean toward following the state's recommendations. My body tensed. I knew Wallace was about to turn the big screw. Suddenly, the short, overweight, balding man sitting at the courtroom door stood up. Your Honor, I apologize for distracting the court, but may I speak with you? It concerns this case. The judge looked around at the burly gentleman in the ill-fitting suit and tie. You're not from the federal government either, are you? A wave of laughter swept through the courtroom. A burly man joined in, smirking. No, sir, ma'am. I mean, Your Honor. Shaking her head, the judge waved her hand. Come on down. Even with this circus, I doubt you can top last night's fireworks display. As the man waddled down the aisle, he met Vince's gaze. They both nodded curtly at each other. I looked at Lisa, who also had a puzzled expression on her face. As he approached the bench, papers rustled around him. A look of surprise appeared on the faces of everyone present. A large man in ill-fitting clothes began to speak. As you can see, Your Honor, all doubts about custody are no longer relevant. He can live with either or both parents. The judge looked at Anna and Wallace. Why is this only being brought up now? Again, the large man answered. Neither of these parties were involved in the filing of the lawsuit, Your Honor. I just received the judgment this morning. It has been going through the system for some time, but as Your Honor knows, our legal system is not renowned for its speed and efficiency. I believe we're done here. The judge tapped her gavel. Take copies of your court documents from the clerk. An official copy will be mailed to you. Next case, please. Lisa and I looked at Vince, who had a catty expression on his face. What? Said Vince. Carlos and I can't shoot at the moon? Even if we missed, we'd still be among the stars. I shook my head. Or we would have entered the Earth's atmosphere and died a fiery death on re-entry. Next chapter. Even before Anna and Wallace's trial, it seemed that Wallace and his son Carlos had always been in the house. We shifted Wallace's financial contribution to the household to Lisa, but she always ended up buying something for the house or for the boys. We had to force her to buy something just for herself. Carlos and the two boys were thick as thieves. Lisa put up with the antics that usually happen when there is more than one teenage boy in the house, and never seemed to lose her temper. That's why I was surprised at how upset she was a week after the Wallace divorce was finalized. Tommy, the police came by today, Lisa said. I bet I can guess why, I replied. This isn't funny, Tommy. Why did you file a complaint against Randy? Lisa, no man attacks me in my house and just walks away. Damn it, Tommy, you know damn well Randy got his ass kicked, literally. And you haven't even gotten your hair messed up. I cast a glance at Lisa. You're defending that asshole? A shocked expression appeared on Lisa's face. God, no. But I just don't want anything to do with him, and he doesn't want anything to do with this family. After my interview, the Metropolitan Police informed me that they were issuing a warrant for Randy's arrest. Well, whoever committed the attack should be arrested, Lisa. Do you think that was a wise decision, Tommy? Lisa, look. If Randy hadn't been dumb as dirt, he'd still have covered about an acre. Lisa was beyond laughing. Please, Tommy. I'm just worried something will happen. It's not like we don't have a lot of firearms and backhoes. Next chapter. A few days later, I was picking up a football ball after junior varsity practice. JV was played by freshmen and sophomores to gain experience before future years on the varsity team, or juniors who lacked the height or skills to make the varsity team. The JV coaching position was voluntary and not very glamorous, and the program received used equipment and gear that the varsity team could provide. The school budget cuts sometimes made me cringe. However, I considered it a small price to pay for my son and nephew's participation in sports. I was so absorbed in my activity that I didn't notice the man's presence until I heard the sound of cracking knuckles. To say I was surprised to see Randy's huge figure in front of me would be an understatement. "It's payback time, you little asshole," Randy said, waving his arms around. "I'm going to have to leave town." I looked around. The locker room was on the other side of the field, and Randy was standing between me and the locker room. He lunged at me, moving fast for a man of his build. Luckily, I was wearing cleats, and I was able to dodge Randy's grip as he slipped on the turf. I raced to the nearest sideline, and Randy chased after me. When I reached the pile of equipment, I could hear his heavy breathing behind me as I frantically rummaged through a large mesh bag. Now, professional NFL quarterbacks can throw a football at speeds up to 50 miles per hour. I certainly wasn't an NFL quarterback, but I had a strong arm capable of spinning the ball into one hell of a spiral. The first ball I threw hit Randy right in the face. Randy may have been dumb, but he was tough. I soon ran out of football balls, but Randy shook his head and got up off the ground. "Is that the best you can do, asshole?" And he lunged at me again with his arms outstretched. Years ago, one of my teammates gave me an old-school whistle. It wasn't some shiny plastic squelch, but a heavy piece of polished chrome-plated steel with a long, sturdy leather strap. This heavy relic could be heard 3 football fields away. I twisted the tight whistle on the strap into an arc and brought the projectile down on Randy's other arm. Staying out of range, I danced around Randy, hitting him with the whistle. But there was a thick layer of fat on his muscles. Even my best shots seemed to make only a grunting sound when they hit him. Admittedly, I wasn't aiming my best. I fell to the ground, hit my head and arm on the edge of the bench, and everything around me went dark. Next chapter. I opened my eyes and saw my nephew's face a few inches from my face. "Hey, Frankie, your daddy's awake," he shouted in my ear. I saw my son stretched out in a hospital chair eating pudding. As I looked around, I saw a standard hospital room with various monitors hooked up to my body. In addition, there was a white cast on my left arm. There was a tray of hospital food on a mobile cart. There were still remnants of mystery meat on the plate, but everything else was gone. "Hey, Dad," Frankie said, dropping the spoon back into the empty pudding cup. "How are you feeling?" He looked at his cousin, then at the empty tray of food. "We thought you wouldn't want to eat when you woke up." My nephew nodded guiltily. "Yes, Uncle Tommy. They were going to throw the food away. Frankie and I didn't want it to go to waste." I could only shake my head. Teenagers are a bottomless pit when it comes to food. "It's okay, boys. Are you still hungry?" An unnecessary question. Teenagers are always hungry. Both boys shook their heads. I looked at Frankie. "How did I get here?" I lifted my plaster wing. "What happened?" My nephew opened the iPad he and Frankie had bought with their summer money earned from mowing lawns. "Frankie saw you fighting Godzilla and ran to the locker room for backup. He was fiddling with the settings. Let me show you." He moved some display cases around. My computer science teacher helped me transfer the security footage to my iPad. A wide shot of a football field appeared on the screen. You could make out the double doors to the locker room, which had swung open about the same time Randy felled me. 24 young men ran out of them and rushed toward Randy and me. Frankie jumped on the edge of the bed. "That was amazing, Dad. You can't hear the sound, but we were all yelling Falcons and Coach Tommy at the top of our lungs." I didn't hear the sound, but Randy must have heard it because on the screen he jumped off my lying figure and tried to run away. Have you ever seen on National Geographic how a pack of cheetahs maul a water buffalo on the African plains? This video was similar, but without the editing. Team co-captains JV Rodriguez and Washington were the first to catch up to Randy. I was proud of them for overpowering Randy the way they were trained to overpower larger opponents. It was a true team effort. "Oh my God," I said, shocked at what was happening on the screen. "Wait," Frankie exclaimed, pointing to the iPad. "That's not all of it. That's not all." Suddenly, a whole bunch of minivans and SUVs roared through the parking lot, driving right up to the fight scene and not even stopping, crashing into the chain link fence. Mrs. Rodriguez jumped out of the lead minivan, a Hispanic woman who could very likely be described as a female 4x4. Mrs. Rodriguez swung her purse like Thor's hammer. The purse I know weighed a metric ton into the fray. Right behind her, Mrs. Washington emerged from the SUV. Mrs. Washington didn't mess around and wielded the tire iron like she knew how to use it. I recognized the other ladies who jumped out of different cars and got into a fight. The screen flickered as my nephew closed the protective cover of his iPad. "That's all we got." He looked at Frankie. "I told you we should have gotten more memory." Turning to me again, he said, "You missed the point when the cops came, Uncle Tommy. They messed up the whole thing." "Yeah, Dad." Frankie picked up on that, then repeated one of his phrases from the video game. "But not before we kicked his ass and took away his gas." My nephew showed me the bump on the back of his head. Mrs. Rodriguez hit me with her big purse. She said it was an accident, but I think she's still mad because I play halfback and her son has to settle for the fullback position. Lisa appeared in the doorway. "Okay, boys, get out of here." She pointed at me. "The patient needs rest. You guys wait in the lobby. Vince will take you home." After a chorus of protests, the teens sullenly left the room. Lisa picked up her bag of clothes and tossed it on the bed. Taking the folder in her hands, she said, "The doctors have cleared you to go home. The nurse will unbuckle you from the bed and transportation is on its way with a wheelchair to take you downstairs. You have a clean fracture, but the cast will be on for 6 to 8 weeks. Keep it dry." Throwing my legs over the bed, I asked Lisa, "Don't they want to keep me for observation or something?" Lisa shook her head. "No, I guess your insurance isn't that good." She rummaged through her purse. "They said to keep an eye on you and come back if you don't behave normally. Since you never act normal, it'll be hard to tell." Putting on my shirt, I asked, "What happened to that moose, Randy? He doesn't seem to be okay." Lisa smirked. "Why don't you ask him yourself? He's right down the hall." She laughed when she saw the look on my face. "Don't worry, Tommy. He's with the police, handcuffed to the bed. Even if Randy could move, with all his broken bones, the only place he'd be headed is up the river. You know, to the state correctional facility." "Couldn't have happened to a nicer guy," I muttered, pointing to my cast. Lisa waved a few pieces of paper at me. "Don't be such a baby, Tommy. I have half a dozen phone numbers for the ladies at the hospital." She took one sheet and grinned. "Plus one guy, and they're all willing to come to our house and give you a bath." Next chapter. Several years have passed since that day. Ole Coach Tommy now has more gray hair and a thicker waist, but that doesn't seem to stop the ladies. What's more, as the years go by, I get more and more date offers. The NR-1 nuclear submarine was decommissioned and some of Wallace's work was declassified. It involved tracking submarines by studying tiny changes in marine life on the ocean floor that other subs passed by. Apparently, this work was of great importance in marine biology circles, as it landed Wallace a position as department chair at one of the nation's leading universities. We still see Wallace when he comes to town to visit his grandson. My boys and nephews are long gone from home, but live close by with their own families and careers. Vince and I continue to live in the same house, and Lisa is still around. I couldn't understand why Lisa didn't just move in with us. She spends most of her time here anyway. Lisa and Vince didn't get married, but Vince rarely dated anyone else, and I know Lisa never did. I think their relationship has moved to the friends with benefits level. Today, I watched in amazement as Lisa and Vince dragged countless packages to the kitchen table. Our latest Doberman, a red-haired female named Three Candies, whimpered, expecting one of the bags to contain a dog treat. "Oh my God, Lisa," I said, looking around at the myriad of boxes and bags covering the countertop and littering the floor. "We're just going to babysit the twins this weekend, not adopt them and their entire preschool class." Vince threw his hands up in the universal male sign of surrender that all guys do when shopping with a woman. "Will you shut up?" Lisa objected. "Otherwise, I won't let great Uncle Tommy teach the little ones how to hit a ball into a hoop." Vince and I groaned. Because Lisa, even though she had attended almost all of her sons' and nephews' games for years and was a former volleyball star, still didn't understand the various sports and their rules. Tommy, guess who I saw today? Lisa said, breaking into my thoughts. The Pope buying socks at Walmart? I suggested. Lisa threw a box of baby wipes at me. No, that was Anna, Carlos's mother. She wanted to see pictures from her grandson's baptism. Oddly enough, such encounters were not uncommon but very sad. In all the time since the arm fracture, Carlos had never once spoken or communicated with his mother. Any cards, letters, or packages that Anna sent to Carlos's home or work returned unopened. Any gift Anna bought for her grandson was immediately donated to a local hospital charity. If Anna was anywhere and Carlos saw her, he would immediately pack up and leave. Anna only had to watch her only child and his family with her grandson from afar. Yeah, Anna cornered me at the drugstore about that last week, I said, as I opened a box of dog cookies and made Tri-Candy repeat her tricks. Anna decided that since I'm her grandson's godfather, I should have more pictures. She made you an offer you couldn't refuse? Vince asked, repeating the old classic line from Marlon Brando movies. Hardly, I said, shaking Tri-Candy's paw. Anna always has that hunted, guilty look in her eyes. It's almost tragic. I wonder what Carlos has to do to get his mom back in his life, Lisa pondered. Just holding her grandson in her arms would be heaven for Anna. I stroked Tri-Candy's head. I think B.B. King said it best. Everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die to get there. The end. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe to my channel and watch for the next video.